Morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. My name is Doug Brunke. I'm the founder and CEO of Global Chamber. This is an exciting program because we're going to be talking about the aerospace market with a global expert, JB Deal. JB, as some of you know, hopefully more and more of you know as time goes on, is an expert in a number of different areas. Unfortunately, he's also very knowledgeable about the aerospace market. He's based in Hong Kong. He is from France originally. He does work for Eastern France and economic development there. He also does a variety of different consulting activities in a series of market segments, and he's got extra expertise on aerospace because of many of his clients and his activities have been in that space. It's also a significantly important market segment for France and Eastern France, and so that all kind of pulls together for us today to be able to hear more about JB's perspective on the market, where it's headed, what some of the opportunities are, and for us to consider more success in the aerospace market. So JB, thank you for joining us today. Please go ahead. We'll have time for questions, and then we're looking forward to learning more.
With pleasure. Thank you very much, Doug, for your great introduction. So as you mentioned, and for the record, I'm a business accelerator. So as a business accelerator, I'm working on cross-border projects between Europe and Asia, with a focus obviously on France and China. So I focus on my strength at the same time, and my strength is basically language, culture, negotiation, network, and integrity. So language, I've actually, it's about speaking English, speaking French, and speaking Putonghua Chinese. Understanding the culture, negotiation, network, and integrity. So that's how I create value, and I work on cross-border projects, including procurement, sales, and investment-related projects. So in terms of investment, I work with a government agency in France. It's a regional government agency called Invest Eastern France. It's a program from the Grand East region of France. So I will share with you my my screen and a presentation. So if you have any question, just feel free to reach us, and we'll be very happy to answer any question you may have. So let's talk a little bit about the region. Okay, let me start. Yeah, okay. So this is basically Invest Eastern France. So the region is including Alsace, Champagne, Ardennes, Lorraine. So today we are here to talk about the region, which is a very dynamic and at the heart of very stimulating business environment. It's also providing a direct access to the main Western European market. And of course, because it's a government agency, we provide free and confidential professional support. So we'll be focusing on the aerospace ecosystem in a region, and we'll do a brief overview of who we are, what we can do, and obviously the government of Eastern France is providing this service free of charge. The program exists because they want to support the local economy, create jobs locally. So there's professional support, including financial and non-financial support. So let's get into it. So basically, the region of Grand East, as you can expect, is in France, but it's also next to Switzerland, Germany, Luxembourg, and Belgium. Very well connected by airlines, and also by high-speed train. It's very easy to access the region. There's also something very specific about the region. 40% of the people living in Alsace speak German as their first language. Obviously, everyone speaks French because it's part of France, so 100% speak French as a first language. But it's one region that is binational between France and Germany. So it's a key for your expansion into the European market if you are focusing on Germany and also on France. which are two of the biggest players in the European market for the aerospace industry. So this is very important. Language and culture, you won't be wrong with this location because it's basically German and French culture mixed together. And not many people know it. If you are coming from an international location, you might not know that, but basically everyone remember about the First World War, Second World War, and this is the reason why today we have this very dynamic region. So that's actually one of the reasons why Strasbourg, the capital city of the region, is also one of the 4 European capitals of the European Union, where we find the European Parliament in Strasbourg. And although it's not a national capital, you find a lot of embassies for this reason. So it's very meaningful for businesses who want to have a European headquarters. It's also very meaningful in terms of logistics. So it's very convenient. And if you need a distribution hub or logistic, at DC, it's also a very good location. And yeah, that's part of the geography, the history, the culture. We cover that. We have about 5.5 million people living in the region, which is rather small in terms of population. But if you draw a line with a 600-kilometer radius, then you can reach about 200 million people in the European Union. And we're talking about the wealthy part of the European Union, so including Switzerland, Italy, Austria, Germany, Belgium, France, Netherlands, Luxembourg. This is the most wealthy part of the most wealthy Europe. So yeah, so this is roughly about the geography, history, and culture. So as I mentioned, it's a very attractive place. And as you can see, there's over 50% of the local GDP that is created by foreign companies, by FDI. And it's really important to know that there are so many big companies in different sectors. They come here for a lot of different reasons, but it's the second region for actually the first region for industrial manufacturing and exports. So it's a very good destination for companies from the US, also from Germany and Austria, because of its affinity with the German language. It's very easy for German and Austrian people to feel at home because, even the name Strasbourg sounds a bit German, right? So, yeah. So basically, one of the strengths of the region is its education and level of research, the quality of the research. So just a few, you have a lot of information on the screen. I don't want to read, so I will just focus on the key points. But just to give two numbers, while we have 5 universities in the region, and we have 5 active Nobel Prize winners. So it seldom happens in the world that we have a region like that. Of course, we have 50 what we call grandes écoles and 35 engineering schools, just to name a few, numbers, a few more numbers. And we have 6 innovation clusters. And obviously, we have, in terms of industrial output, we have the automotive industry, which is very strong with Alstom. The TGV was manufactured there. We have car manufacturers also in the region. We also have an innovation cluster with Materialia. So for new materials, it's also a key place where you want to be. I'll quickly go over it, but we are at the heart of the Bio Valley, what we call the Bio Valley, which is the healthcare is very strong in our region. And also in terms of AI, we have the AI Valley in Europe, and we're also at the heart of it. Just to mention that, but obviously we're here to talk about, the industry of excellence regarding, aerospace. So those are the 10 industries that are very well known in the region. And yeah, aerospace is one of them. All right, so now you can see on the map, we have different companies that are located in the region. And we have, of course, big names. I'm sure many of them you will recognize many of them. We also have a lot of airports, and so it's also connected. Aerospace represent about 11,000 employees in our region, and big names like Safran, Leach International, Amphenol, Raffle, just to name a few. So it's very meaningful location. I have to say that the people are very hardworking, and they have a very German mindset. So they're very focused on quality. And this is also one of the assets of the people is the asset of the region. So we also have education. Basically, it's easy to hire people, very highly educated people. We have, like I mentioned earlier, R&D ecosystems and 180 R&D labs, which is decent amount of labs, as you can see. You can see some of them on the screen. We have the INRIA, we have also a lot of engineering schools in Reims, Strasbourg, Mulhouse, and yeah, so a lot of very well-respected schools. I talked about innovation cluster. We have, in terms of material, the cluster called Materialia. So we are focusing on aeronautics. So a lot of, but it also works with automotive, energy, and healthcare. So for Materialia, this is really an interesting location if you're into materials and processes. We also have, like I mentioned earlier, we're the heart of the AI Valley, but it's IT is one of the strengths of the region, and you can see some of the infrastructure are really cutting edge. We have one of the best high-speed broadband network in France. A lot of data centers and operators, high-performance computing also at the University of France. And this basically what I like to mention also is, like, we would like to invite you to come to visit us, and that's part of our our promotion activities. So we are here to promote the region and show you the value and what are the assets of the region, and why we think you might consider this region for your project. So we are a government agency, as I mentioned earlier. So we are at the regional level, but obviously we have city level, we have national, and we can also connect with European level. So it's kind of a big family. So the way it works is we normally ask you to share business plan, project details, maybe with a timeline, how many functions you need for your office, what's the staff count, what's the impact of your project, and based on that, we'll build a proposal for supporting your project. We have one of the best R&D tax credit in the whole of Europe at 100 million per year, 100 million euros per year, or up to 30% of the R&D expenditure. So R&D is definitely a very, if your project has R&D, you're very likely to like our region, basically, and our country, France. And in terms of manufacturing, you can also expect a lot of financial support from the region. So in terms of non-financial support, we make connections, introductions with partners. Obviously, the amount of support depends on the size of the project, and we always work in a confidential and professional manner, so we cannot share many details, but we do have very meaningful projects. What else? Well, basically, we can help with anything that you need. We need you to tell us what is your issue. Sometimes people come to us and say, hey, we have maybe an issue. We worry about the school for the kids, for the owner of the company. They want to relocate. So we have international schools, obviously, that we can, connect with. And yeah, it can be also about visa, for the family. It can be a lot about many things. Sometimes the owner or the company wants to find a piece of land. It has to be a brownfield or a greenfield, or it has to be a flat or office headquarter. We can help any way you like. Yeah, we're here for that. So about the quality of life, the region is also very well known in terms of its tourism industry. So obviously we have a lot of good food, good wines, the good climate also, which is pretty pretty nice, I would say. Not too hot in summer, not too cold in winter, although it's still like close to Germany, so it's borderline continental climate, but it's definitely not like it's still a European climate. And yeah, so there's obviously a lot of activities to be enjoyed, museums, and beautiful landscape, green. It's a very good location for enjoying life. Yeah, so in a nutshell, we are here to support. We advise on strategic options, and make sure that we speak out, because sometimes people don't know about us. But we are definitely a good location in Europe. We have a lot of assets. We help you to find a suitable location for your project. We also advise on what kind of public support program you can get. We also help to organize a look and see trip. So we'll pick you up at the train station, at the airport, and we'll just show you around. I will introduce you to strategic partners. So we have to understand from you what you need. If you need to talk to a lawyer, an accountant, or a partner, we can do that. We definitely have the network to, satisfy your need. But obviously, the government doesn't enter into business relationship. So we can, in some cases, introduce with a client or distributor or, network, I would say, in the specific industry. But the government does not enter into business relationship. Yeah, the last point is basically we try to make your life easy and make your expats and feel at home. Yeah, so this is basically what we can offer to you. And yeah, so thank you very much for your time. Yeah.
Thanks. Appreciate the overview of all of that. Wonder if we could go through a few questions based on what you presented here. You
Yes.
talked a little bit about the different countries. I'd like to talk through those with you in terms of advantages and disadvantages, and then would love as much as possible to get your perspectives on the aerospace market itself and how it's evolving and changing, current perspectives, and where you see some of the opportunities. And so and get as deep as we can, or as time permits. The first part being, you mentioned about how that region of France in particular, where and very, very knowledgeable about, is surrounded by not just the rest of France, but Luxembourg, Belgium, Switzerland, Germany is all there. It's the proximity to other aerospace countries, the lower cost areas further east, including Poland and Hungary, certainly are the ones that stand out, and maybe there are some others. Could you talk a little bit about the Eastern France's advantages and disadvantages versus maybe a few of these players in terms of, employment cost, in terms of the incentives? You mentioned a little bit about some of the incentives that are available. When you work on projects, where are these companies often thinking about as alternatives, and then how do they end up making the decision for Eastern France, advantages, disadvantages versus these others?
Very good question. So let's talk about the ecosystem. Obviously, a company can always select a region in Europe which is cheaper in terms of labor. But I think at the end of the day, business is here to earn money, and you need to be close to your clients. You need to be close to your supplier, to your supply chain, and you need to be at the heart of the action. You could always, find a cheap labor in Portugal or Greece or a small country, but it's definitely not offering the same level of the same ecosystem. So this is one of the key things that we need to consider, and labor cost is one component, but it's not everything. It's like a formula that you need to add many different parts. But if you compare Germany, for example, Netherlands, for example, like France, those three, just to mention three, the cost of labor is roughly the same. It's like 37, 38 euros per hour, including labor and insurances, social security, all of those different costs. And basically, it's really roughly the same. There's not much of a difference there. In terms of quality of people, you can find qualitative people in the region, experienced people. So this is also very important. And I think this is also what you can find in different parts of Europe. And also, in part of France, because we have another, different regions that are also very strong in terms of aerospace. And for example, Toulouse, in the south of France with, a lot of players there also. But let's say that our region, Eastern France, is more geared toward France and Germany. This is really one of the strengths of the region. The bilingual, cultural aspect is very helpful. You can have, let's say, an office, and someone, calls in from Germany, someone pick up at the office and answer the phone in German. And at the same time, you can have someone who answers and talk in French if someone is calling in from France. So this is also, I think this is one of the key strengths. There's another component, which is basically the cost of land. And, Eastern France, the land in Eastern France is among the cheapest in Western Europe. So it's definitely much cheaper. We can compare office building, just to mention a specific example, but London is very, very expensive. Frankfurt is very expensive. Paris is very expensive. And Strasbourg is like very, very cheap, very affordable. And it's a small it's smallest of the 4 European capital. And therefore it's kind of an asset for the region. But obviously, if you come, it's not because the land is cheap. It's because you have a rich ecosystem. You have suppliers. You can find partners, clients. We also work with investors. I have to say that Invest Eastern France is primarily dedicated for businesses. We're looking for big projects, but we also have a business accelerator program. So if a company is a startup and if they want to expand in their region, we also have a program to support them. And with two things mainly. One is what we call the go-to-market, to help them develop their potential and business, and also connect with investors. And but obviously the government of grantees is going to provide support, substantial support for projects that can create jobs. And it's obviously confidential, but you can expect if there's a significant project, we'll do the best we can to get a project. So this is a key focus is job creation. And engineering is one of the strengths of the region. The labor, the ecosystem, the energy also is relatively cheap. but it depends, it varies. But France has a lot of nuclear power plants. So historically speaking, electricity was cheap. And obviously right now with what we know is happening in Russia, we have a lot of things. Currently things are evolving, but France is holding pretty well. With the inflation is lower than in many other parts of Europe. So it's a stable and safe environment for developing a business and developing activities. Yeah, so do you have any other question, or did I cover enough ground?
I think largely I wanted to list out the two different lists of countries. Number one is the top 10 or 12 exporting aerospace countries. And then I've got a list of 20 top aerospace countries, not necessarily exporting. So on the just how much of the overall world market share they have. So it's a little bit of a different cut of it. So on the export side, I think there's some interesting information here. Number one by far, as you probably know, undoubtedly, is the United States. This is 2021 data, $89 billion of exports. And number two is France, is 31 billion. And then Germany at 27, UK 13, Canada 10, Italy 5, Spain 5, Singapore 4, Ireland 3, China 3, Brazil 3, Israel 2, Netherlands 2, Switzerland 2, and Japan 0.7. So that's kind of the exporting side. And the other data that I wanted to share was just kind of overall market size, like where is the aerospace industry around the world? 31% is in the US, 14% is France. And so I think it reinforces, why we focus today on France and your expertise, because of so much of it being there. Germany is number 3 at 11%, UK 10%, and then it drops all the way down to Singapore at 3%, Canada 3%, China 1 to 2%, Japan 1 to 2, Spain 1 to 2, Ireland 1.5, Italy 1.5, Netherlands 1.2, Russia 0.9, Poland and 0.9. I think in my own head, I thought Poland and Hungary were more significant because of people that I know, but clearly that's not the case, but not insignificant. Taiwan 0.7, South Korea 0.7, Mexico 0.7. And that's also an area where we see a lot here in North America, a lot of activity in aerospace in Mexico, but they're number 17 on the list. Belgium 0.6, Israel 0.5, and Switzerland 0.5. So what's your reaction? This is data that you already know, I'm sure, and I think it well positions France as the number 2 leader on both of those lists.
Yes, that's correct. And basically, if you look into the details, you will realize that there's different components. You have the planes, you have the rockets, you have satellites, and military, civil. So you have different ways to read the numbers. But to make it short, France has been a strong player, and for a long time they have been supporting the aerospace industry and the development of national champions. And so this is in line with decades of strategy, national development goals. I think we're all too young to remember that, but the Comet, for example, program, and then that what became Airbus, France had a big role in this, in the birth of this organization. And the same is true with Ariane space. So it's really a key France has always been a key player in this sector. France also has a lot of smart people, good education. Mathematics is very strong in France. Engineering also, we have some of the best engineering schools. So no wonder, the number that you gave are just quite obvious. It's really obvious for a French person to have this reading, but obviously it's the US is definitely number one. But for its size, France is doing relatively well, and I think it's if you have a project, if you want to expand in the EU, I think France is a good location. And if you look at the global economy, the US is around 16% of the world GDP, roughly. China is also another 16%, and then the EU is another 16%. So today we're talking about globalization. I don't know, Doug, if you've heard of this term before, but basically global and also local mixed together. So companies, why global? Because basically the world is very small. We all need to work together, for the resolve the big problem that we're facing, humanity is facing. So we have to think global, but at the same time, we have to act local. We have to be adapted to the local market, the local requirement. In Europe, we have the GDPR, for example, requirement for, basically we have to think local, but be global. Yeah. So it's kind of, if you want to expand in the EU, and I believe you do, then France is a good location for the aerospace industry. So please let us know. Yep. And we'll be happy to build a proposal. And the service is free and confidential. I have to reemphasize that I'm not a government employee. I'm a government contractor. But basically, we'll be connecting with government official as soon as we have enough information regarding the project, and then we'll build a proposal.
Got it. And when you look at the dynamics within the information, I think you point out a really key first step is that within aerospace, there are key segments. Typically, as you said, I think military is often there, some aspect of military, commercial, and the satellite side, and maybe others, and certainly on the component side, that's all split out depending on end use. I'm wondering there's a couple dynamics I'd love to hear your thoughts on. The first part of it is just kind of given all of those countries, where do you see increasing and decreasing? Where is the energy moving in the market today? Europe versus the Americas versus Asia, and which countries and which companies are important? And then could you talk a little bit about China? You're well positioned because you're sitting in Hong Kong and you're doing with perspective on this market segment, doing a lot of work in France, and so you can see some of the dynamics there. There was a time 20 years ago in particular where there was a belief that a lot of this, maybe most of this manufacturing, at least on sub-assemblies and things, would be shifting to Asia. I don't think that's happened exactly as thought, 20 years ago. And part of that is, how China is maneuvering the world right now. Could you talk a little bit about those, the first part of it, the dynamics, and then the second part of then how does China fit in and what are the impacts of that?
Yes, of course. Basically, aerospace is a key component. We all see, satellites, and this is becoming part of our life. So this is not going to disappear, and it has more and more of a strategic importance to our daily lives. So this is going to be strengthening. Another focus is in terms of military, with what's going on in Ukraine and Russia. I think we all know that, and it's everyone knows basically that there must be more spending in terms of military expenditures. So this is also worth to note, because there will be more development in this respect. And in regards to China, obviously, China used to be considered a very cheap labor place, and this COVID situation and the aftermath, I would say, has made people realize that Europe has been dependent on China, and Europe needs to have to be strategically independent. At the same time, China used to be very cheap, but if you compare the prices of labor 1 year ago with today, the euro went down, or the RMB went up 20%, and plus inflation, it's 30%. So in 1 year, 30% difference is huge. So since last year, just last year alone, there's been a huge increase in cost, I would say. So many companies cannot really afford, it depends what kind of industry, obviously, but 30% on the net margin of any company is a big number. So so we would definitely see more development in Europe. And at the same time, we also see that countries are trying to become more autonomous and rely on themselves more. There's a lot of risk, supply chain risk, and also we want to make sure that we can control, like, for example, during the COVID crisis, there was not enough production of face masks, right, in Europe. So then people realized, hey, what happens, and then we also started thinking about medicine. China is manufacturing so much of, different medicines. So then it was a wake-up call in Europe. And so definitely the past, the future is going to be very different from the past. That's what we can say. Yeah.
I just looking at something online, one of our key collaborators posted something about, and I hadn't seen this yet, but China announced that they're going to be opening their borders in 2023, March of 2023, which is, I think, well beyond what I thought. I thought it was imminent, but that's a long way away. They seem to be struggling and kind of pulling out of a lot of the commercial activity integrated into important areas like this, and becoming more autonomous. And I'm just wondering, isn't that an opportunity then for France and for maybe other countries, maybe countries that, China maybe historically taking lower cost manufacturing regions, is, where does that activity shift? Is it Mexico? Is it Malaysia? Is India a player at some point in all of this? And do we see more activity in Poland? We went through that list earlier. I thought Hungary was a bigger player, but they're not in the top 20. Where are some of the players? Who else might kind of come into play? Where do you see people moving over the next several years, or is it France? I don't know. I don't want to presume I know the answer. I know in automotive, historically, in automotive, I know quite well in Asia, where it was, Japan was taking country by country, lower and lower cost. And so, initially, I guess it might have been Singapore, and then ultimately it went to Indonesia and Vietnam, and, almost every country to be able to get lower cost strategically and then begin manufacturing. There are some similarities, right, between that and the aerospace industry, although aerospace seems to be much more tolerant of manufacturing in higher cost countries. And I think maybe largely because shifting automotive is you're potentially now shifting manufacturing toward a consumer market, where a lot of the consumer market doesn't necessarily interact in the same way for aerospace. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are around the dynamics regionally and by country.
Yeah, well, when you were talking about the cost, it's one part of the equation. And productivity, supply chain, convenience. There are many different factors that has to be factored in when you have a business plan and you want to expand your activity in Europe. And cost can be one, but at the same time, we're also worried about keeping, you know, the know-how protected. And there's a lot of different types of consideration, but by nature, I have to say that Eastern France is a very good location, for a project. And I would highly recommend to have a look at Eastern France. You can definitely select 2-3 locations, and I think Eastern France will be in the top 3, I guess. And then you can pick up the best. We are fair and square. So yes.
What's your view of the current dynamics? There's a lot of talk about a global recession or regional recessions. I think we're starting to see, higher inflation, or it's not starting. We've had inflation for a couple of years now around the world, some places worse than others. Within our global chamber meetings, it seems like Africa in particular has some pretty tough situations in some countries, including high inflation. It seems to be more tempered in others. And to me, it still seems somewhat debatable whether there's going to be a global recession. There seems to be bits and pieces of it. Certainly, the UK is an example of that. What's your view of France and the EU in general over the next 3 to 6 to 12 months relative to the overall activity?
Very good point. Well, France is currently doing quite well compared with the other European countries. The inflation is pretty low, actually. It's around 6% at the moment. But some EU countries, the Baltic countries, have around 20%, inflation rate, so which is really a big impact given the proximity and the dependence they have on the Russian gas. But obviously, this is a crisis. But at the same time, it started a cycle, and I believe it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity in the sense that it's pushing Europe to act faster for global energy transition. Trying to implement the carbon-free, economy and circular economy. Getting more independent, stronger supply chain and energy supply. I think in the mid to long term, Europe will come out strengthened from this crisis, will become more united. You can see a lot of solidarity between different countries. It's also helping to make the countries realize in Europe that they cannot play alone. They have to be a group. They have to be united. It's pushing towards a more united Europe. It's also pushing towards a more united Europe in defense and politics, obviously. I think it is going to be a tough winter for many countries, but it is in the mid to long term, it's going to be beneficial. I mean, Europe will come out stronger from this. And given what I said earlier, the Europe is still like 16% of the world economy, right? So it's if you want to be a meaningful business, if you want to be global, you should definitely be in Europe. And it doesn't matter if you can definitely go to Europe, explore, and it's not like you don't need to rush. You can take your time to have a look at different options. But at the same time, Europe is not going to disappear. And tomorrow, whatever happens, it's still going to be here. And let's say that, let's put it this way, right? If there's a crisis, and if you're put, and everyone else is, because everyone is impacted by the crisis. So don't put everything on standby, be positive. And if you are making standby, but everyone is going backward one step, right? And if you are on standby, you don't move 1 inch, you are stuck in the same position. You are already doing much better than the other competitors. So in any case, be positive and think positive. Now might be a good opportunity. As we say, I learned this in China. In the word China, in the Chinese word for crisis, there's two characters, and one of them is opportunity. So in every crisis, there's always an opportunity, and I think it's always good to be on the lookout for opportunities and be positive. And Eastern France is always here to support. Let us know how we can support. And yeah, we are very positive.
We just have a few minutes remaining, and I just have a couple more questions, and then we'll close the room.
Yep.
As long as we have you and your expertise, we've been talking about aerospace. I'm wondering, what other opportunities do you see in your activities, particularly in France? What other markets are increasing? What are the hot areas that we should know about? And then, let us know any other closing comments that you have, anything else you'd like to emphasize, and then we should be all wrapped up.
Okay, very good. Well, at the moment, obviously, energy is a strong sector. So in terms of geothermal, wind, solar, gas, biogas, anything related to energy is very strong.
Okay. That relates to all the stuff with Russia and Ukraine, and Germany's reliance on Russian gas, which now no longer is available, and so
yep.
So that's driving clean tech almost accidentally.
Yes.
Europeans believe themselves to be leader in the world for clean tech, and yet here we are. It's really taken this to really force the hand of the country. So those areas are hot right now.
Yes, I believe it is. And people are very conscientious, about the environment. They are very, they want to consume less, consume in a better way. We see this with fast fashion, right? So there's so much talks going on regarding, what the world economy is doing and how we should improve the system that is a bit, it should be more circular. And yeah, so this is another area of ESG projects, and how to make the world a better place and protect the environment. So this is one thing. I will be very general, and we could talk about a lot of things, but AI and IT is a very strong topic, also a very strong industry, very good subject. What we call Industry 4.0, it's also very strong. Another topic is related to food. So food tech, bioeconomy is also quite strong. Bioeconomy, because we have a lot of wood also growing in the region of Eastern France. Yeah, so those I would say, if I had to pick three in priority, I would put healthcare, which is very important. The second one will be AI IT, and the third one would be Industry 4.0. Those three would be the three core projects, at least for Eastern France, at least for Eastern France. Those are the three, I would say, key projects. But we can go into details. For example, like in Industry 4.0, we have bicycle, a reviving of the bicycle industry right now. This is quite amazing. But people, the government is trying to push for people to utilize more bicycles. Wow. So we are building a lot of infrastructure for bicycles. We're also supporting the local manufacturing of bicycles, the job ecosystem, the ecosystem evolving around bicycles, factory brands, components, frames, bicycle frames, all of the bicycle industry. And we expect a lot of job creation in this sector. Yeah, so, yep. By the way, if you know any bicycle manufacturer that is interested to come into Eastern France, for this specific project, we might be able to recommend clients, especially if they're manufacturing aluminum frames for bicycles. So we'll be supporting with financial support and also with introduction with partners. So this is a very general overview. Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
Frames. So that means there must be aluminum manufacturing in France. I didn't know that. Why aluminum, or is it a market-driven need?
It is a market-driven need. Yeah.
Okay.
There's carbon, but carbon bicycles are polluting. So aluminum is probably a more environmentally friendly solution. But
wow.
Yeah, it depends on what level. The devil is always in the detail. And but right now we have a need for aluminum frame producers.
Wow. What an idea. Okay, that's really interesting. And you're saying the government is driving some of that on their side.
Yes, we have a plan, and I could do a presentation if you like about this next time. But yeah,
that's fascinating. Yeah, that there'd be such a revival, and France being Tour de France and
yes,
such
exactly.
a key player in France in bicycling. Interesting how that all plays together. Wow. So yeah, I think that's really fascinating. And one of the things that you mentioned reminded me of some of the activity I know we've been involved with on the food and beverage side, and maybe also just generally consumer goods that are being driven by the advancement of e-commerce. That just the whole technology of buying things on the web driven by COVID, and people going to online and getting things ordered. When I'm in Silicon Valley in particular, it's funny because like the people that we know, like they don't even go to the store. Like everything is delivered. There's a constant delivery of things to the house, and it's fair. I mean, I would think that's probably on the advanced part of it, but I'm sure you're seeing a lot of that as well. And so what's required is the technology, right? The online, the technology, the alignment of logistics and the technology there, right, to align with the websites, and just the being able to fulfill all of that. And I think also cross-border on the export side, you've got to have many times regulations that allow certain shipments. I know into Mexico, as an example, there's a dollar amount limit in terms of under a certain amount of dollars, there's no customs inspection required, so that if somebody is in Mexico City and orders a pair of shoes, they can get the shoes delivered the next day. But to get that all to work, you need the technology online, you need the logistics fulfillment, and you need the customs process streamlined. Are you involved at all with any of that? And I got to believe there's a lot of opportunity in that area as well.
Yes, as I said earlier, I'm an independent business accelerator. So I work under contract with the region of Eastern France, but I also work with other partners. And one of them is a global e-commerce company. And
okay.
I'm happy to do a presentation about that.
You've given one on Lingual, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly.
And so I don't know if that's up yet or not, but if it's not, we'll make sure that that's up, because that was a fascinating conversation about the trends that are there, and so you're definitely seeing that in your work. That's good.
Yes, definitely. Global e-commerce, global EC is getting stronger.
Thank you for sharing all of that. Do you have any final comments that you'd like to make relative to anything you've like to reemphasize, or any final comments about the work that you're doing, so that we know how to get a hold of you and where you're located, and maybe the key areas where you're working? What are the projects that are of most interest to you right now?
Well, I would definitely give a focus on Invest Eastern France. So we are a government agency. We provide free and confidential support. You can reach me anytime. I think you have my contact, right? They will be in the description of the event, right? So
correct.
You know how to find me. Yeah, we're here to support. So let us know what is your project, and we'll be very happy to support. So thank you very much for your time, for everyone. And it's, as always, a pleasure to work with the Global Chamber. And thank you so much, Duke, for doing all of this work. And it's a great job. So thank you so much, Duke.
Thank you. Continued success. Thank you for sharing today. That's the end of the program. Watch for additional programs in different areas around the world that are changing and evolving. The world is evolving, and, sometimes what you get is, it's same as historical, where certain regions of the world figure that, oh, things must be getting really bad. Well, they don't take the bigger picture and recognize that maybe something in their world is evolving, changing, declining, but in the rest of the world, things are increasing and improving and shifting. And that's one of the fun things about being part of Global Chamber, is we get to see the whole world on a macro level. And I can tell you, things are evolving in a good way, and the world is getting better, and the opportunities are increasing exponentially. And so it's really important to stay connected to people like JB, who have their finger on these opportunities, so that you can shift and move your own business to be successful. JB, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your evening, which for you, there's not much time left in your evening. Sleep well tonight, and thank you again for presenting today.
Thank you very much. All right. Take care.
Good night.
Good night. Bye.